program from the Sangamon County Circuit Clerk's office. The information contained in this program is solely for the use of the people of Sangamon County to make them more aware of the services of the Circuit Clerk's office and the issues that they deal with. By law, the Circuit Clerk's office cannot give legal advice. And now, the Sangamon County Circuit Clerk presents an examination of genealogy and an in-depth look at issues relating to expungements. Your host, Tony Leeper.
On this portion of our program, let's talk to Dan Dixon, who is the president and editor of the Sangamon County Genealogical Society. That's a hard word to say.
Yes, it is a hard word to say, Tony.
What do you do?
Basically, we help people do their own family research, tracing back generations.
That's a big thing right now.
Yes, it is. It's probably the top internet resource as far as people accessing stuff on the internet.
Well, what does the society do? How do you help people?
Well, we can help people on an individual basis on Tuesday nights from 6 until 9 o'clock, or we can have them ask for special help, and we have a genealogist. We've got a phone number that will come up on the screen at some point, and they can access us that way.
So you actually help people research their past, basically?
Yes.
Tell them how to do that?
Tell them what sources are available in the county, in the state, and the nation.
Okay, and you meet on Tuesday nights, did you say?
Yes, on Tuesday nights.
All right, currently where are you meeting, so in case people
2856 South 11th Street. It's on the corner of 11th and Knox.
And that is your office?
That's our office.
Okay, now what types of materials do you have in your collection that help people?
Well, we have microfilm copies of birth, death, and marriage records for Sangamon County, and we have...
I see some publications here, as a
some
matter
of
fact.
our quarterlies that you're holding there. People will write to us and give us their family tree, and we'll put that in our quarterly, and sometimes that helps other people research in the same name. We've got a lot of information about the different cemeteries in Sangamon County, and there's over 200 in the county. And
I imagine the people that are associated with the society are history buffs like you and I are, and they can rattle off things that you and I or most people would just be amazed at about the history of our area.
That's true. I had a lady call last night, and she was telling me about the cemetery in Chatham that nobody's been able to locate yet, but hopefully she gave me a good source that I can go over there and look and see if we can find that cemetery.
Well, you know, Sangamon County is one of the oldest counties in the state of Illinois, and we go back to the early 1800s, and as you know, we have, or used to have, tons of Lincoln documents and other historical documents. Your society has not been big on using our clerk's office, but I think we might have some information to help you. I mean, would you agree with that now that we've had our...
Now that I've had a chance to talk with you about different things, it sounds like you may have some sources that we've not been able to locate before.
As you are now aware, we have legal documents. Every time someone has been sued, someone gets divorced, we have adoption papers. For the most part, those are sealed. But what's interesting about that might help people piece their history together. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that might have that one bit of information that can make them go back 2 or 3 more generations.
And the circuit clerk's office is probably not the first place you would look, as opposed to perhaps the county clerk's office.
Right.
But we want to change that, and with your help, maybe we can do that. All of our records are open to the public. They are free to examine from our Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 in our office, and we might even see if we can work out having a meeting there with your society members, and that might be kind of interesting, and show them some of the things we've got.
I think they would probably be interested in coming.
Well, speaking of interesting things going on, what projects do you have going on with the
just
society?
recently we've had a lady working for the past 2 years on transcribing the 1865 census. It's over 200 pages, and she's finally finished it, and it's been interesting. She found some references to African Americans in the census, and she added that information where you normally would not see that information. In addition to that, we're working on a book of cemetery locations. We're going out to the 200+ cemeteries and finding
in Sangamon County alone.
In Sangamon County.
Fantastic. Sangamon County is rich in history, and you're trying to capture that. How many publications did you say you've put out so far?
Had a minimum of 40 different publications that we have.
And some of these are pretty, pretty hefty documents. I mean,
Yes,
you got a lot of
yes.
information there.
Yes.
All right, real quick about the society. Is there a charge to belong? How does someone get in touch with you?
To get in touch with us, they can call the phone number 529-0542, or email me at dbutton2@aol.com, or they can come to the society office at 2856 South 11th. And to join the society, it's $15, and they'll get
So it's
the
a minimal
4
fee.
quarters.
And they will get a lot of help on how to trace their history, and having a computer and access to the internet, I assume, is a big plus.
Yes, that is a big plus, but it's
Excellent.
not a necessity.
Right. The point is you can answer their questions and steer them in the right direction.
Yes.
Dan, you've been a pleasure to talk to.
Good talking
Mr.
with
Dixon,
you.
thank you very much. With the Sangamon County Genealogical Society, and we'll be having you back, and hopefully we're going to help some of your society members get some information that they've been looking for.
We look forward to it.
All right, thank you. In this segment, we're going to be talking about expungements. We have a special guest today. He's an expert in the field by the name of Josh Carter. And Josh, I want to make sure I get this right. Assistant Defender of the Illinois Office of the State Appellate Defender's Office.
That's correct.
Well, welcome. Thank you for coming. You are the expert. Your job is to make people aware of the expungement program. Let's help people be aware of that, because every day people call up the circuit clerk's office. How do I get this expunged? This action on my record. Can you tell us, first of all, what is expungement and why is it important?
Sure. Expungement is essentially an order from the court for the law enforcement agencies and then your office as a circuit clerk to remove certain qualifying criminal records. And when you talk about expungement specifically, those records are going to have to be non-conviction records, so arrests that resulted in a dismissal or acquittal or court supervision, that type of thing.
Well, and we've got a few minutes to kind of delve further into this, and we're going to talk about what is expungible, what isn't, what do you get by having that done, and what do you don't get. All the questions I'm going to ask you today were written in by viewers and people who were concerned about this. First of all, we know what an expungement is. What is the process to get an expungement?
You have to file a petition with the circuit court. Once that's done, on a petition to expunge, the state has 30 days to object to it. Then you'll have a hearing in front of the judge, and if the court is willing to grant, if you qualify, there's been no objections, everything's good to go, the court will enter the order to expunge the arrest records, and then that gets sent out to the law enforcement agencies for processing, which typically can take 30 to 60 days, depending on the situation.
All right, so the idea is that if someone has committed an offense that is expungible, and again, we'll get into what is and what isn't in a couple of minutes, it's a way of helping them out, kind of clearing the record so they can move on with their lives. Maybe they made a stupid mistake when they were younger, and this is a way of kind of helping them out. Is that essentially what it's designed to do?
Yeah, generally speaking, I'd say that's pretty much dead on. Expungement itself, as opposed to sealing of records, which is a little bit different but very similar process, again, is only going to apply to those non-conviction type records. So for the most part, because arrest records are public information.
That's right.
And
I don't know if people know that. Everything, with the exception of sealed records, adoption, mental health records, those types of things, they're all sealed. You can't see them. You can't see the sealed ones, but you can see everything else just by coming up to our office and asking to see them.
Absolutely.
Divorce records, whatever, yeah.
And those types of things can have a great impact on somebody seeking housing, employment, things like that. So where they qualify for expungement, you definitely want to take advantage of that.
Okay, first of all, once you realize that you have an action on your record that you would like expunged, do you need to get an attorney?
It's not required. You can, of course, hire an attorney if you'd like to help you through the process. Our office is there to answer any questions, get people, forms and instructions that they might need. We're not allowed by the statute to actually represent someone.
Right. But you are an attorney, as are your co-workers are there, so they can give legal advice, as opposed to the circuit clerk's office not being able to give legal advice. So we're going to have your address, your phone number, everything appear on the screen, but you are open Monday through Friday, I assume?
Correct. We're there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We have toll-free hotlines that people can call in on. We also have email addresses you can access through our website to send in any questions that anybody has.
And when these changes in the expungement laws went into effect, part of that change was to ensure that people were made aware of this program, and that's kind of why you're here today and what you do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We do a pretty well comprehensive educational program. I was in Carbondale last week. Yesterday I was down in Lawrence County, and I'll be in Chicago tomorrow talking about this.
Well, fantastic. Hopefully we can get you to do an entire program just on expungements, but let's go back to some of these questions I have. First of all, what does it cost? Once you've decided you want to try to apply for an expungement, what does it cost?
There's a filing fee depending on the county that you're in. I believe here in Sangamon County that fee is $60 for a petition to expunge. The state police will charge another $60 if your petition is successful and the order is granted to process that. You can also, if you hire an attorney, you know, there are fees involved with that, but you're not required to do that, and most people go forward on their own.
How long does the process take from beginning to end, from the filing of the paperwork to its conclusion? How long does that take?
On a petition to expunge, you'll file the petition. There's a 30-day statutory waiting period that the state gets to review the petition and object if there's any problem with it that they see. At that point, it goes before the judge, and once the judge enters an order to expunge, the order gets sent out to the law enforcement agencies to be processed and the records removed. That typically will take about 60 days, maybe a little more than that. The local law enforcement agencies and the circuit clerk's offices move very quickly, but because
Thank you for saying that.
Well, and they do, but the state police has 102 counties where they're getting all these orders in, so they take typically a little bit longer to get it processed.
So it's going to take several months, but it's a venture worth taking, I would assume.
Absolutely. I would say for a petition to expunge, you're looking at about 4 months typically till it's completely out of the system. If it's a petition to seal the records, which again is a slightly different process, because the statutory waiting period is 90 days, that takes a little bit longer.
If I am someone applying for a job and I realize that the application says, some say, have you ever been arrested? And some say, have you been arrested / convicted? And those might cause you a problem, and that might be why somebody wants something expunged or sealed. But can you explain the difference between expunged and sealed so the everyday person can understand that?
Sure. Interestingly enough, the statute doesn't define either term for us, which creates a little bit of a problem. But generally speaking, in practice, expunged records are going to be physically removed, destroyed even as far as the law enforcement agencies go.
And even me as the keeper of the court's records could not go back and find it because it is gone.
Right. Now, most of the time with the circuit clerk's records, the court will order those impounded, meaning that they're not physically destroyed, but they can't be accessed outside of the court ordering that, which is an extraordinary thing to have happen. The difference between that and a sealed record is that sealed records are going to be maintained in their entirety by the law enforcement agencies. They're just off limits to the general public. There are a few exceptions there for certain types of employers like school districts and child care providers. They can still access sealed conviction information, but by and large, those records are off limits to the general public.
What about an individual who says, you know what, I was involved in an affair, a legal affair, but I was not found guilty, so do I need to worry about that?
I would recommend in that situation, if it's an arrest that doesn't result in conviction, and you don't have another conviction on your record, then you would be eligible for expungement in that situation. Because the arrest information...
But you still want it expunged.
I would strongly recommend it because the arrest information is still public. And there are, if the person, for example, was arrested and then later charged, that information is going to be publicly available in your records at the circuit clerk's office, even if later they were dismissed or the person was acquitted. Likewise, the police records, the police reports, once they're no longer a pending case, an active investigative file, those are public records as well, at least to a certain extent. And potential employers, landlords, your nosy neighbor, whatever, can access those.
But I think it's important to stress that even though you weren't convicted of an offense, and we're not talking about speeding tickets, things like that, but let's say you were, give me an example, what you could be arrested for but not convicted of. You were, you know...
Well, anything from, say, a simple misdemeanor theft all the way up to first-degree murder,
Yeah.
you know.
You weren't the guy that was found guilty after all,
Right.
but you were still arrested. So it's still important to have that expunged if it's going to have an effect on you personally. I would assume.
Sure.
Go ahead and do it.
You know, especially for people who may have been arrested and then later, you know, found to be innocent of the charges, be it through an acquittal at trial or...
and that's a good way to put it. Even if you're innocent, but you were arrested, you probably need to be concerned about that.
Sure, because if an employer, for example, saw a serious felony charge that you were later found not guilty of, you know, that can still cause you problems in a couple of ways. One is that depending on how well versed the employer is in reading a criminal record, they may not know the difference between a case being charged and later dismissed and somebody actually being found guilty of the offense.
And now some would argue that it's not fair that that should be on my record, but but when you think about it, it's not saying you were convicted. It just says you were arrested. It doesn't say you were convicted, so it is fair to be on your record.
Right, and I hear that a lot from, you know, that this, why is this on my record? I wasn't found guilty. Well, you know, like it or not, the law makes those arrest records, you know, public information.
Now, as you said earlier, the world is becoming more sophisticated. If you're going into the military, if you're a bus driver, if you're working with children, you're a teacher, you're going to get a background check before you get hired.
Absolutely, and I would say over the last 6 or 7 years in particular, the increase in the number of employers who do background checks, it's been exponential.
Right.
I mean, you're literally going to face a background check for just about any type of employment anymore.
So it's good to be concerned with that. Now, this process, all these papers that have to be filed, can they do this all through the mail, or do they have to come to their circuit clerk's office or your office?
Most clerk's offices will allow you to file by mail. I think, generally speaking, if you can come down in person, that's the better mechanism, because, you know, very often with this type of paperwork, there are little things that might need to be adjusted, and you want to make sure you've got your filing fees correct, all of that. If you do it by mail, most of the time it'll work fine, but you may end up getting it back, you know.
Yeah, because you weren't there to answer a question that might have needed to be filled in. Okay, other questions that were written to us. I've been given a hearing date. Do I have to appear in court?
Yes.
I would think you would, yeah.
Yes. Judges do not like it when you don't show up.
That's true.
And I think that's the quickest way to have your petition denied.
Okay.
If you absolutely can't be there, and I get calls a lot of times from people who may live out of state, you need to have an attorney appear on your behalf then.
Right. So let's say you live in Colorado, but you happen to have been arrested for something 20 years ago here. It would be best to have someone represent you if you can't be
Absolutely.
here. Okay. Even on a minor thing, if you want the expungement to go through, you probably need to follow through with that.
If you're asking the court to give you that relief, then you need to be there.
And that's a good point. If you're asking for relief, you have to be sincere enough to where you spend some time and actually show up.
Sure.
So I think that would go a long way in convincing the judge. On job applications, do I have to reveal any expunged actions or records?
Expunged records, no, with one big exception, and that would be law enforcement. If you want to be a police officer in Illinois, law enforcement agencies are still allowed to ask you about and require you to disclose expunged information.
So if you have had something expunged and you fill out a job application or a background check and it says, have you ever been arrested or convicted for whatever crime, you can say no if it's been expunged.
Yes, because...
But you better be sure it was expunged.
Right. You want to make sure that you did actually comply with everything.
So you're not lying.
Right.
Okay.
The reason for that is that state law bars employers, with the exception of law enforcement, about even inquiring into or using expunged records. Now, on the sealed side, there are a few more exceptions there, like school districts and child care providers, that can also ask about that because they get that information. But otherwise, it's off limits, and they actually... I don't know how many employers know this right now, but the law, when it was amended here a couple years back, actually requires job applications in Illinois to specifically state, if they are asking about criminal records, that they cannot inquire or you're not required to disclose any expunged or sealed.
All right, so we don't have to worry about some savvy employer saying, have you ever had anything expunged from your record? That would be inappropriate to ask that? Or?
Yes, in fact, that'd be
Unless
a violation.
It's law enforcement. Okay.
Right, it would be a violation of the Illinois Human Rights Act to do that, actually.
That's interesting. Okay, will expunged records be deleted on a federal level?
Well, the answer to that is maybe. The Illinois State Police, if you get an order granted, will request from the FBI to return the information to them and remove it from their files. Technically, the FBI is not necessarily subject to a state court order on that particular point, but generally speaking, they will comply, and the state police, will send that request out to them and have it removed from their database.
And chances are, if you're applying for a job at the local city hall or whatever, they're not going to request the FBI forward you that information, so it's not that big a problem, I would assume.
They may or may not, but if you've had it expunged, odds are it would not show up in that.
Okay. How do you know when something's been expunged or sealed? What do you get from the court? How are you notified?
Well, that varies a little bit.
But you are told that, hey, it is expunged or it is sealed as of this date.
The court you'll get a copy of the order once that's granted. The Illinois State Police used to send you a letter once they had complied. Because of the backlog of cases, the number that they've been dealing with, they've actually stopped doing that for an interim period. I think they're switching over some software, and they'll start doing that again. Right now, unless you get a letter from the state police saying that they've not complied for whatever reason, after about 90 days, it's safe to assume, I guess, that it's been taken care of. What I usually will recommend is that somebody contact the Bureau of Identification with the state police.
So they can't call your office to find that out?
No, because we don't have any actual access to those records.
And neither would the circuit clerk's office. Let me ask you something. The next obvious question would be, what is expungible? But it's probably quicker to say what is not expungible. That's probably something we ought to identify. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. So if you can give me a brief description of, don't even try it if you've got this on your record.
Sure.
What would those be?
Well, with expungement, you cannot have been convicted of a criminal offense to be eligible for expungement.
Okay.
So all your cases would have to have resulted in an acquittal, some type of dismissal, court supervision, or the first offender probations under the various drug statutes, which are not counted as convictions.
So murder, rape, those kinds of things aren't going to be expunged.
If you've been convicted.
If you've been convicted of them.
Now on the sealing side, it's a little more broadly construed. So you can have some convictions on your record and possibly qualify for sealing, if not expungement, depending on the specific offenses. And generally, nonviolent misdemeanor offenses will qualify for sealing, as will Class 4 felony drug possession or prostitution.
Okay, Josh, you are our resident expert, and we're going to recommend people call you if they have that problem. The number is on the screen. Again, you are the Assistant Defender of the Illinois Office of the State Appellate Defenders Office. Let me say office a few more times in that sense. Josh, you've been a blessing to us. Thank you for coming. You're a wealth of information, and hopefully we'll have you back and you could do an entire program just on expungements, because I'm sure this is going to trigger a lot more phone calls.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome.
That concludes another program of Sangamon County Circuit Clerk Presents. We hope you found it useful. If you have ideas of future shows or have a question that needs to be answered, please contact us at the address at the bottom of your screen. And you can also contact us through the World Wide Web at www.sangamoncountycircuitclerk.org. We'll see you next time.
The information contained in this program is solely for the use of the people of Sangamon County to make them more aware of the services of the Circuit Clerk's Office and the issues they deal with. By law, the Circuit Clerk's Office cannot give legal advice.